Are you looking to get ready, be prepared, and transform your financial future? Then you've come to the right place. This is the Get Ready Money podcast with Tony Stewart, where Tony has insightful conversations with financial experts who are changing the way we think about money. Catch up on the latest financial trends and hear practical advice from Tony and his expert guests so you can build healthy habits that work. Be empowered with tips for implementing small changes that can have a big impact on your financial future. So sit back and get ready to hear from today's guest.
Welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast, changing the way we think about money. I'm pleased to be joined today by Bobbi Rebell. Bobbi is an author, podcast host, and founder and CEO of Financial Wellness Strategies. In this episode, we'll be discussing Bobbi's insights on how we change the way we think about money and being a financial grown-up. Bobbi, welcome to the Get Ready Money podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. But I have to tell you, the accomplishment I am most proud of, you left out of the intro. I'm a certified financial planner.
Oh, no.
Which I'm so proud of. So I want to just tell everyone that, because I think the reason I say that is because, while you are certainly extremely well qualified to talk about money, to say the least, there are a lot of people out there talking about money that don't have any credentials. And I think it's really important to everyone that we remember that it's important to know who you're getting money advice from. And being a CFP is something I take very seriously.
Well, great. Well, before we plunge in, how about telling us a little bit about what is a CFP?
A CFP is a certified financial planner, and it's a very important designation because as a CFP, we are fiduciaries, which basically means that we have to put the needs of clients first. So specifically, an example, if you go to a makeup counter and you don't know that they are offering, that they're paying their salespeople the most, they get a special bonus if they sell a certain shade of lipstick. So you go up to a makeup counter and you say, what's the best makeup for me? What's the best lipstick for me? 99% of the time, they're going to say the best lipstick for you is the one that we're getting a commission on. They won't tell you that, right? So you go to a lot of financial advisors, and what you don't realize is a lot of the time the advice they're giving you is not necessarily the best product for you. It's the best product for them to sell you. And so it's really important whenever you're buying any financial product or making a financial decision, you understand the priorities of the person that you are engaging with, and that they are a fiduciary, which basically, again, means they put your needs first. And so that's just really important I guess that might be the best advice I give to anyone listening to this podcast today is know who you're getting your advice from.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's so important, not only for financial services, but for basically anything, is know what people are trying to sell you and what their motivation is for giving you certain advice. But that's especially true with money and the internet and social media channels and, all these people pitching all these kinds of things. Is, that question is, what's in it for them? Is always a good question to ask. And CFPs are neutral parties to advise you. And that's always something to look for. So, let's plunge in. Let's talk a little bit about you. What is your origin story?
My gosh, I love and hate this question. My origin story is, so I am the daughter of a Wall Street professional and investment banker who always wanted me to work on Wall Street. And to this day, I have never worked on Wall Street. So I remain a disappointment to my father. And I hope he won't hear this, because I don't want him to think that he's done anything wrong. He has not. He's done everything right. Because what he did is he gave me a way to balance my love of storytelling and journalism with my interest, which became genuine after it was initially forced on me, in finance and money. So I had wanted to be a journalist, probably a local news journalist. I still kind of want to do that at some point. So don't be surprised if I pop up, and that's why I'm on local news so often talking about money. I love local news. But he kind of said, well, that's great, but I think that eventually you're going to wake up and realize that you really should work on Wall Street like me. And so we compromised, and I got an internship at CNN Business News. And the good news is I really did love learning about money. And I really did love understanding the nuances of how we make financial decisions, how the government and tax decisions can influence the kinds of decisions we make, how our relationships influence what we decide with our money, and so on. I really fell in love with the idea of paying attention to money. What I didn't fall in love with was leaving journalism. I stayed a journalist. So I think I remained a disappointment in that sense only. But I think I've done okay in the profession. I started my first job where they actually paid me was at CNBC, where I started as a production assistant. They called it news associate at the time, but I worked for a lot of amazing people that taught me so much. And I should say, by the way, fun fact, when I was an intern at CNN, I worked for someone who later became very well known named Maria Bartiromo. She was a wonderful mentor to me. I also worked with Stuart Varney, who's now also on Fox. And then at CNBC, I was a production assistant working for, Joe Kernan and a bunch of those guys. All great experiences. I moved up from there. I then went back to CNN Business and eventually got on the air because I realized that was kind of where, frankly, the money was, that you could make more being on air than writing for the people on air. And it was also more fun. And I was at PBS at the Nightly Business Report, which is unfortunately no longer a show. And I eventually landed at Reuters, where I was a global business anchor eventually, and also wrote a globally syndicated column on personal finance topics. That was a lot, Tony. And then there's the whole next chapter of my life, but that could be a different question.
Okay, well, we can get into that, but I think, that your background in journalism does help because of your communication skills, because money is complicated to talk about. And so I think that your journalism skills are definitely a benefit to the financial world, is because you're able to communicate those things. And I do know other journalists who have been very successful in the personal finance space. Cameron Huddleston, who's been on the podcast, Michelle Singletary, Gene Chatsky. There's so many people who come from that world who've just really been able to communicate so well because of their background in journalism. So I think, that is a success story, because you are somebody who's able to actually get the ideas across, where somebody from Wall Street just doesn't speak the same language as the rest of us. So
I appreciate that. And I think with one exception, they're all people that I know, am friends with, and truly admire. So that was a great running list, and all women, by the way.
Yeah, and I think you and I have talked about this, and we probably don't need to go too far into this, but I think from people who've watched and listened to the show, is a majority of my guests are women, and I think women are really leading the charge in the financial literacy and financial wellness space. For a whole variety of reasons we could spend a whole show talking about. It might actually make a very interesting show. But when you look at these leaders, like, the people I named, they are mostly women. And I know the editors that I work with at different publications and producers are quite often women in the personal finance space. So it is interesting, and would make a great topic for another show.
We'll do a group show.
That would be fun. We should do that. So let's switch up. Let's talk a little bit about, what you're talking about. You talk a lot about financial grownups. Tell us, what is a financial grownup?
Financial grownup is, first of all, everyone can make their own definition. I want to be clear about that. To me, and by the way, my definition also evolves. To me, a financial grownup is someone who takes ownership of their money situation and is able to take proactive steps to work towards the goals and priorities and values that they identify. Someone who's really intentional with their money.
That's awesome. And,
wait, pause, Tony. How would you define it?
A financial grown-up for me is somebody who's mature in the way they think about money. Is that it's, somebody who has made the decision that they want to be an adult and make decisions. Is that when we grow up and we graduate from college or high school or whatever and enter our work life, is, we make that decision to switch on and become connected and engaged in becoming an adult. And I think we don't think that way about money. Is that, it is a mindset change that, we have to do this. And it's maybe it's not a job taking care of money, but it's part of our life. And we can either live single and, and careless, or we can start to make our plans and be a grown-up. So I love what you're doing and your concept with framing it that way. So.
Yeah, I loved your definition. I think that was really great. I might steal some of that language.
Oh, please do. And I'm probably going to steal some of yours. So that's great. And that's the point of the show is, for people to learn and trade ideas. And hopefully this will touch some of the viewers and listeners and help them change the way they think about money. So, let's talk about writing a book. Writing a book is hard. What inspired you to write your books, How to Be a Financial Grownup and Launching Financial Grownups?
So it's very interesting. My background is in television. I wanted to do them in the form of a documentary. And the truth is, it was just too heavy a lift. I was working a very full-time job at Reuters, and I had 3 kids at home and a husband and a dog. And I actually still have some footage because I did start the first one as a documentary, but it wasn't practical. And I'm just going to be honest with your listeners and viewers, I was very insecure about the idea of writing a book. It was very intimidating. And I remember even my agent said, well, because my background's in TV and people kind of think TV journalists can't really write. And my agent even said to me, well, who are you going to hire to write the book? Because nobody believed I could actually write a book. And, not to mention a mainstream published book that was actually in bookstores, which is still crazy to me that this happened. And I guess I just decided to do it. I was very inspired. It's kind of funny. I don't know if we've talked about this. I was actually inspired by Tony Robbins, who talks a lot about just deciding to do something and just, having that click on and then just doing it and not overthinking it. And the weird thing about that is if anyone goes to look at How to Be a Financial Grownup, guess who wrote the foreword?
Tony Robbins, right?
Tony Robbins. I manifested it and it happened. And it's a TMI story for another time, how that actually happened. But I did not know Tony Robbins at the time that I was reading his book. I think it's Awaken the Giant Within. I did not know him. And I was like, I'm going to write this book and I'm going to get Tony Robbins involved. And I'm going to have him. I was just hoping to get a little quote from him, but it ended up that he wrote the foreword, which is so crazy. And I've met him more times than I can count at this point. And I just really believe in his messaging. I know that's a little controversial. As for the content of the book, what was happening was I was at this job at Reuters and the younger employees were always asking me for money advice because I was sort of a more senior reporter there, journalist there. And I realized that they were not getting this information from their parents or from school. And I was constantly giving them advice. And I thought, wait, all these early career people need money advice. What can I do? And I went on what I would call a mentor tour. And I literally called up everybody that I had ever gotten advice from or thought was smart. And it was a lot of people. It was over a year. And I just said, can I come to you? We don't have to have coffee. Full disclosure, I'm just going to ask you for advice. I will come to you. It will be 15 minutes. I'll be in and out. Easy, easy. And one woman that had been the PR person for my dad's firm, going back to my dad on Wall Street, was so lovely. Her name is Davia Temin, and she basically sat me down and we had a series of meetings. And she said, what can you offer? There's a million personal finance books out there. I know you want to teach young people about money. What can you do that no one else can do, that you can do at least better than other people? What is unique about the story you can tell? And I realized that I had been, by the way, the head of booking at CNN FN, which is a financial channel. I knew I had booked hundreds of brilliant, smart business, famous in the business bubble people. And I said, I have access to amazing people in the business world. And she said, why don't you ask them their advice? And so if you look at the structure of How to Be a Financial Grownup, it is basically tidbits of advice from really successful business people. So the CEO of Macy's, Tony Robbins, Kevin O'Leary, Cynthia Rowley, who's a fashion designer. I even got Drew Barrymore in the book. She has had tremendous business success. I mean, people think of her as, Drew Barrymore that's, kind of grew up as a child star and all the stuff, but she's got product at Walmart. She is fantastic. And I got her to answer some questions for me. And so it's sort of this hodgepodge of business advice from incredibly achieving people. And woven within that, I put my own 2 cents in, my own reporter research on, if somebody gave something where they sort of realize they're going to be old one day, I would put in information about retirement. Somebody talked about how exciting it was to buy their first car. I put in information about how to get car insurance and so on. And I love the book. It sold okay. Maybe after people hear about it in this podcast, it'll get a second life, Tony. And, I'll have a new burst of sales, but I love that book. And I think it offered tremendous insights from some incredible people.
Yeah, and I'd urge people to check it out who are watching and listening. Especially, it's a good gift right now. People are graduating. People are graduating all through the year to different facets of their life. And I know from my personal experience talking to high school students and to college career centers, that this is an issue for young people. They are scared. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to start. And their parents, as a parent, where did you learn it as a parent? And talking to their parents, it's like they don't know much about their money, so they're not able to pass on the skills like maybe they can pass on other skills, like how to drive, how to go shopping for groceries, how to cook. Those are all skills that we pass on to our kids. But if we don't know about money, how are we supposed to, teach our kids about it? So I love that you have those books. I'd urge anybody who has a young person in their life, whether it's your kid, grandchild, nephew, niece, check out Bobbi's book and see if it's a good fit for you and your family members. So I love that you've written something in that area because it's a huge need.
And Tony, I will tell you, so to your point, you just made an excellent point that parents often don't know how to start the conversation. So that was a brilliant point that you made. That's what led me to my second book, Launching Financial Grownups, which is for parents. And my biggest frustration with this book is that parents will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to buy this for my kids." And I'm like, "No, that was the other book. This book is for you." Launching Financial Grownups is very much for parents, to help parents who don't know where to start. Because again, and you made such an excellent point, we as parents might say, "Oh, I can teach my kid how to drive. I can teach my kid how to go grocery shopping, but how do I teach my kid about money?" That's why I wrote the second book. And by the way, confession here, I was struggling with this. I knew all about money. I don't always make the best decisions, but I have the information, to be clear. Just because you have information doesn't mean your finances are perfect. I just want to be honest about that. But I was really struggling with how to get my kids to make the right financial decisions because it's not always apparent, and they are very peer influenced at young ages, early career, or they're so busy living their life that they don't have the time to set up the systems to execute what they actually want with their money. They have the right intention, but every single day they're just busy living their life. And it's really hard as parents to figure out how exactly do I get into that and help them set themselves up for success. Not the parents set them up, the kids set themselves up. And that's where it gets really tricky because you can't just do everything for the kids. You have to actually teach them and let them be their own financial grownups. So that's why I wrote Launching Financial Grownups.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I'm just thinking, my son is 19. And so, we go through a lot of this myself, and it's a struggle. And especially because they're impacted all the time, like on social media about limited drops of certain merch and things like that. And it's like, well, it's all marketing.
There'll always be another limited merch drop.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
But that doesn't really work with them because it's by definition, they know how to get to our kids. All those internet marketers, they're good. They know what they're doing.
Exactly. And so it's, teaching them the philosophy, how to think about these things is really important. And it's like you said, I agree completely with you, is we have to teach our kids to make these decisions for ourselves, not what we think is the right decision, but for them to be able to figure out their priorities and goals and how to achieve those priorities and goals. So that's awesome. So one of the things you talk about is living our richest life. How can people live our richest life?
The first thing I think is to define what you see as your richest life. What is the most important thing to you? So I saw a post, I was thinking about priorities. I saw a post by Dr. Brad Klontz, who you probably should have on. He's amazing. He is a financial therapist. He's also a CFP. He's really big on TikTok. But his post today on LinkedIn basically said, who feels better about money? The guy who, and it was very exaggerated. It was like living in a trailer park and driving some car that he was supposed to be not nice, but I don't even want to say, I don't remember because I'm not a car person, but driving a not nice car, or, having to work 50 hours a week, but you live in a mansion with fabulous cars. And I looked at this and I was like, I don't know. I kind of would be okay with a 50 hours a week. I know that's the wrong answer, Tony, but I kind of am okay working 50 hours a week because I do want to have a nice car and I do want to have a nice house. And I don't want to live in, I believe he said a trailer park, but it was something like not so nice. And I get that you can like lower the bar and be really happy with a simpler life. But sometimes if you're honest about your values, I do value having as much money as I can to make me comfortable and feel secure. I think financial security is something we have to be honest about, that it's very hard to feel financially secure if you don't have enough money. And there's all kinds of studies about how, and this was proven to be sort of limited. I don't want to say false, but limited in its scope. There was a study a few years ago that said after $75,000, which is $108,000 in today's US money, your degree of happiness really kind of levels off. Like anything above that number, you're sort of maybe a little happier, but the real happiness, the magic number is what would now be $108,000. And it was found to be faulty because it was so linear. It was like happy, unhappy. The truth is, many people would be much happier having $500,000 a year in income versus 75, because wherever it just gives you so much more freedom with your health, with your family, with things you can do. It's fun to go on a really expensive, high-level luxury vacation. So I don't think that we should deny that. I just think we also have to make sure that we focus on economic security first, having that foundation, having that backstop so we don't have financial anxiety. And we also want to remember that we shouldn't define financial success simply through material goods that we can buy. That doesn't mean buying an Xbox for your kids that makes them happy isn't a really good purchase sometimes. Let's just be honest. If there's, a lot of games, by the way, they've been finding teach some skills. Again, guardrails as a parent. I'm going to make sure I say that. But yeah, I think it would make me happy if I won the lottery. It makes me happy when I look at my investment accounts now. So I'm a Gen Xer. So I've got a couple of decades, maybe 3 decades, almost crazy, of, this 401k retirement plan savings. And the numbers do get bigger and it can be really exciting. If the market comes up, I will put it out there that on occasion, when I see the market hit a new record, I will go look at my 401k and smile. Because it does make me feel good. I'm like, wow, I'll be okay. It's going to be okay. And I think having that financial security, back to your question about living your richest life, I think it comes down to economic security and knowing that you have the money to buy the things you need and be a support, not just to yourself, but to your family and friends and anyone you care about, should they need to have financial support. You want to have those things, you want to be able to pay for the things that matter to you. And then you want to pay for some really fun stuff also.
I love that. Well, you said so much in there that is amazing. We could probably drop the mic and end the show right now. Although we have so many things, that we will, love to discuss. But one is I do have an episode scheduled with Brad Klontz coming up for his new book. So that'll come out in the fall. So
tell him I say hi.
Okay, I sure will. And so for watchers and listeners, that will be coming out in the fall when Brad releases his new book. Although offhand, I can't remember the name of his new book coming out.
He mentioned it in the post. So everyone go to Brad's LinkedIn and look at his recent posts.
Yeah. And, and I'll post it in the show notes. But I think, what you're talking about is so important, that these decisions are personal. I've talked with a friend of mine about doing a show, just putting the personal back into personal finance and focusing on that as a topic, because I think what you're saying is so relevant for people. Is that, you're taught, give up your daily coffee, or you're taught to drive an old car, or, this is what the millionaire next door does. But, it's really, it's really about what brings you joy. And as you said, if you want a new car every 5 years and you can afford it, or every 2 years, at least a new car, yeah, maybe is it on paper the best decision? Maybe, maybe not. But if it's bringing you joy, and like you said, and you're willing to make that trade-off, if you have to work a couple extra hours a week or whatever that may be, it's bringing you joy. Don't deny yourself things. It's just balancing out. You can't have everything, like you pointed out, but you can have some of the things that you want and enjoy yourself. So
Exactly.
it's so important.
I,
I
I
love
I
it.
totally agree. Yeah. I think that, well, it's it's about choices, as you say, but it's also part of the choice is not choosing between having something or not having something. It's choosing how much you want to work to have more financial choices, right? And many people love their work. If you talk to some of the most successful entrepreneurs, they work all hours and they wouldn't have it any other way. They don't know what else to do with their time. They love it. That is their hobby. And it happens to, be very lucrative. But I do get frustrated, I'll tell you, because we're both in sort of a financial educator community, that there has been a movement, and I support everyone to do what they want, but there's this whole idea about, retiring early and not having to work. And yes, of course, I don't want people to feel they have to work if that's something that makes them unhappy. But a lot of us find purpose and meaning in our lives by having work. I love to work. So this idea that work is bad really should be re-examined. Again, that could be another topic. I think if you are in a job that makes you unhappy, rather than focusing on retiring at age 30 by, never buying anything for 10 years and depriving yourself, and then figuring out the magic formula to take money out of, an account so that you never, you can live in a very basic life. If that works for you, that's fine. But for most people, there's going to be a lot of financial surprises in life. And if you don't have a continued ability to make money beyond what you've necessarily saved, you could find yourself in a precarious place. Now, there is a magic formula where at a certain point you have enough money that you really will be okay. But I have seen that some people that do this really make tremendous sacrifices in their youth and don't have that enjoyment. And I just hope that people don't feel that work is such a bad, we villainize work, I guess is what I'm saying. Vilify, I think is the right word. Let's not vilify work.
That
Let's
works.
find work that brings us enough joy that we can keep doing it and finding that purpose in our life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And for people who've been watching and listening to this podcast in a while, you may remember my conversation with Prudence Sue, who achieved financial independence at the sacrifice of everything for 10 years. Bobbi, you know her, she's part of our networking group. And, in the conversation is that's what Prudence talks about, is that if she could go back in time, she wouldn't have, worked quite so hard at the financial independence because of things that her and her husband gave up to reach their goals. For people who
Yeah.
follow other people in the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, a lot of them are going back to work part-time and finding that, hey, maybe this is different and they need to reframe it. And so I think, basically it comes down to choosing what's right for you. And
Mhm.
as we talked about with your prior thing, is the other part is prioritizing it. Is having a new car every year important to you? Is saving more money for retirement more important for you? And it's all, what's going to bring you the most joy. So I want to ask you one question before we get into the get ready questions about your new endeavor is, why did you create financial wellness strategies, and what is financial wellness strategies?
So, financial wellness strategy, and thank you for asking, is my financial wellness education company. There is only one me. And so, before I was giving speeches and workshops and programs, and by making this a corporation, I can hopefully scale up and expand and reach more people. Effectively, what we do at Financial Wellness Strategies is we provide programs, which can be 1 hour speaking engagements. It can be half-day workshops. My favorite thing is our newest offering, which is office hours, which we work through HR departments, but we could really do this for any group. And we have a 40-minute session. So it's kind of during lunch hours, and it mimics the idea of office hours that you had in college, where you could kind of come and just kind of ask your questions, but everyone can sort of drop in. So it's virtual. So you can have your coworkers there, and you can ask a question. And what it does, and by the way, the questions are asked anonymously in advance. You submit them. So there's no shame, right? There's no embarrassment, but the questions are usually pretty universal. And then I give my best answer, but we also can get group input. So they're not necessarily things like, how does a 401k work? It's more like, I want to contribute to my 401k, but I also have this student debt and I also have credit card debt. And then I'm being asked to be in a wedding and oh my gosh, and what do I do with that? And so I might have my answer, but then the group can also chime in and you get a community support and no one necessarily knows who asked that question, but you get a group answer along with a professional answer from me because, I'm a CFP. And it helps, especially with questions that are more nuanced. Like, well, what do I do when my coworkers are asking me for contributions to their kids' fundraising thing. And I can't give to everybody all the time. And I don't want to shortchange somebody. I don't want to give to some people, but not others. And some I may want to give more money than I do to others and so on. And I feel very pressured. What's the best way to handle it? Right. So I may have my answer, but then because it's an office hour session, you might have 30 coworkers on the call who can then give you their 2 cents. And you get a sense not only of the right answer, but the community answer without having to ask yourself. It's great. Even, group gifts. How do you handle dinner bills? That kind of thing. Or even like tricky family questions have come up. Things like, a relative wants to continue to build a business. They're asking me for money. I don't think this business is going to make it. In fact, I know it's not. And it's good money after bad, but they know I have the money. They know I can afford to help them. What do I do? Do I have a hard talk with them and crush their dreams? Do I give them the money and just say it's gone? What do I do? Well, I have my answer. And again, the group might have some really productive answers. I use that one actually in workshops. I started using that dilemma. And in my workshops, I'll generally split every question I will give to 2 different groups. So let's say I'll have 4 questions. I'll make 8 groups. And so each question is asked by 2 groups. I have never had the same answer from A and B groups. Isn't that amazing? Wow. They always come back with completely different, they read the questions differently and have very different perspectives. And the conversations are very different, which I find fascinating. And I think it shows that money is meant to be a conversation, not a lecture. And so that's what I would say most of all with financial wellness strategies. My goal is always to start presentations and workshops and office hours. I'm the leader, but very much it's a group conversation and we all work together to take away the shame and find the answers to how we can better solve our financial wellness dilemmas.
Yeah, I love that. That is a great quote. Money is meant to be a conversation, not a lecture. And I think we miss that. And that's exactly what you're talking about is people have these different perspectives on the same issue. And it's so important to talk about, those real life issues that come up is, yeah, you need to know how to allocate your 401k investments, but that's not a question that we're faced with every day. We're faced with a question like, oh boy, yeah, my cousin is bugging me for more money for their business and I don't really want to invest in it, but I don't want to ruin my relationship with my cousin. Right. So how do you do that?
Yeah. And they know you have the money. That's the zinger line. They know you have the money. You can't plead poverty because that would be the easy out. I just don't have the cash. Right. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. I'm thinking back to a recent time I used that and the answers were polar opposite.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my personal answer, which nobody's probably asking, is to come up with your plan. And then you can say like, I have a plan for my money. I encourage people to come up with their own personal investment policy statement and to say, look, this doesn't fit my investment policy statement or something like that, where, then it's not about them, it's about you. And maybe something like that. I don't know what's come up for you, but that would be my thought in that area. It's just to kind of change the
another
focus.
New one. That's another new one. That's an interesting perspective. The risk that you might run with that is that they might say, I'm not asking you to invest in my business. I'm asking you to give me a gift of money because you're my brother-in-law. I know you can afford it. And I need a cash injection right now. And don't you care about, your nieces and nephews? I need to support my family while I'm building this business. Why won't you help me out?
Yeah, boy, this
it's
make a
hard,
great podcast episode.
It's so hard. Yeah. It's a conversation. And then you have to kind of figure out, okay, what do you say to that? These are tough things, really tough things. I'll give you one more. This is an interesting dilemma. This happened. A young person said, I'm watching my money. I'm trying to save. One area to save is I'm bringing my lunches to work. Okay. First job. bringing my lunches to work. The women that are already there, it was a young woman, invite me to lunch, and they all go out and have $20 salads every day. And I know that it's good for me to be included in this group. And if I say, no, thank you, I'm having lunch at my desk, I know they will stop inviting me, and I won't form these relationships. And I don't want them to, I really am not interested in discussing my money issue with them necessarily. So what do I do? What's your answer, Tony?
Well, I think you have to do what's right for yourself
But what is right?
Well, that's
Career
I think,
investment. You're talking about a short-term money saving versus an investment in your career or professional relationships. So what is the financially responsible thing to do?
really, it's not a cop out, but I think it's being clear on your goals and your values and knowing your cash flow and all those things. And, and then, like you say, is talking about the cost benefit analysis. Is it worth it to you to invest in the short run for something that's going to pay you long-term dividends with those career relationships? That is a smart investment. But if it doesn't feel right to you, and I think that's the thing where it comes down to me for money, if it doesn't feel right to you and you don't want to do it, don't do it. It gets back to what we were talking about earlier. You have to be happy with the decisions that you make. And if it's something you really feel strongly about, for me, I encourage people to, go with their gut and how they feel. It's, that it is about the numbers, but it's also about, at the end of the day, it's like, are you going to feel ashamed if you don't go? Is there shame in saying, I can't afford to go, or I don't think this is worth it? Some people are loners, so they may not enjoy that camaraderie. So not to cop out on the answer, but I think it's multi-layered, and we have to think about our psychology and how it makes us feel to do these things. And if we're comfortable saying no, sometimes it's really hard to say no to the group, and you go along, but you're not enjoying it. So yeah, there's no good answer. We could talk about this.
Well, but to your point about it being a conversation, how about you go a couple times and you buy the salad, and then you kind of scope out where they're eating, and maybe they're takeout salads. So maybe you can go with them, walk with them to the salad place. So you're in the conversation, but bring your lunch and you sit outside, and everybody say, let's sit outside. I'm going to bring my lunch. I'm trying to eat healthier, because she doesn't remember. Part of the question was she doesn't want them to know her money. That's just her personal choice. She doesn't want to discuss her money. At this point, she just met them, because then they'll say, oh, no, we don't want you to come, save your money. And they just won't include her. Go a few times, start establishing it, see if you can get them to get the salads takeout and sit somewhere where you can bring along your lunch. And the other thing to think about is, okay, it's going to cost you X dollars per week to go with them 3 out of 5 days per week, right? Maybe if it's really worth it to you, and this kind of goes back to our conversation about Brad Klontz and working a little harder, maybe you either reallocate money in your budget towards lunch, right? Maybe you go out one night less per weekend with your friends and have your friends come over and just hang out at your house, at your apartment, right? So you cut something else, or you get a little part-time job, you walk dogs or whatever is comfortable for you on the weekends to make a little cash to pay for it, because it is an investment in your career to form these relationships. So it's a conversation. I mean, you could just go on, we could go on a tangent about what this person could do to be able to have these relationships. You also could invite them to go to a different place that's half the price one day, or just say, I'm not that hungry. Let's all go for coffee today. Something, or start, once the relationships start to be formed, find other things to do with them. Be like, I really want to get some fresh air today. You want to go for a walk? Right. So the first few times you're going along with them because they have their routine. And then as you get to know them, you can find ways to build on those relationships that you've started to establish by doing things that are more cost effective for you, like simply going for a walk when you need a break from work, maybe one at a time instead of the group. Say, to one coworker, hey, I need a break. Want to go take a walk? Let's get a coffee. And you get a coffee instead of a full lunch. And you get the drip coffee, by the way. The drip coffee is always less expensive than the lattes. You can put milk in your drip coffee and order the smallest size, which, by the way, fun fact is Starbucks, tall is not the smallest size. There is a short.
Yeah.
It's not on the menu. Get the short.
Starbucks talked about training you to speak their language. Starbucks has done a masterful job of getting you to think in their terms and to think differently. But I think what you've said here, and I hope people really tuned into it is that there's more than one approach to any issue. And there's not necessarily a right approach, but what you're talking about is that people, is you can think through, it's like, how can I approach this problem differently? How can I achieve my goals and also make it fit with the rest of what I'm doing? And it's like, can you change something else? There's a lot of levers you can turn to come out with the same result that you'd like to achieve in the end. And it's all about the trade-offs that you're willing to make for that. So I love it. So let's hop into the get ready.
Wait, let me just tell you, but you brought up a good point. I just want to add, because you said something really important. And what you're basically talking about is that there are no linear solutions. And this is so important to me, Tony. It's like you're reading my mind. When I was naming my company, the original name was going to be Financial Wellness Solutions. And I thought to myself, wait, I can't offer solutions to people because everyone has to have their own solution and it has to be a conversation, not a lecture, right? And that's why I called my company Financial Wellness Strategies, not Financial Wellness Solutions. So I think that you're teaching me a lot, Tony.
Oh, I'm learning a lot from you, Bobbi, but thank you. And I love that. And I think people should reflect on that, strategies versus solutions. Find your strategy and create your own solution. Nobody can tell you the answer because the answer is personal. So unless you've read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, have you read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
No, and I know I should. I know.
Well, the answer to the universe is 42. So that's the solution at the end of the book. So it's a spoiler, but for people who've read the book, they can appreciate it that the answer to everything in the universe is 42. So that's the solution, and you have to figure out how that applies for you. So, so let's hop into the Get Ready Money questions. The first one is, what basic money concept do you wish people knew?
What basic money concept and I should have read these in advance because then I would have answers ready, but maybe it's good to be spontaneous. I would just say being intentional. Make deliberate decisions. I think the biggest money mistake we all make is not making decisions. We tend to put it off. I mean, the literal translation of this is not opening the envelope, not looking at the numbers, because I find when people are freaked out about money, generally they haven't actually looked at the actual numbers. And that's usually the answer. Because if you're wondering why I never have money, well, look at your spending. Just look at your credit. I like to keep everything in one place. So I have one credit card that I use for my stuff, one for business, and so on. And so it's very clear when you're overspending. So for example, when I started Financial Wellness Strategies, I was overspending on joining different organizations. I'm a member of way too many things. So now I'm working on paring back my organizations because you only have so much attention and focus and time. So even if it's not causing a financial burden, it's causing a attention burden. So look at your numbers and they will tell you the answer in most cases when you actually look at your numbers. So being intentional.
I love that. Being intentional is such great advice. So, Bobbi, what is one simple thing people can do each year to set themselves up for financial success?
Look back. People always say, oh, don't forget the past, just focus on the future. I totally disagree. We all learned from our past. We are so informed by the decisions that we've made in the past. And they're often better decisions in retrospect than we gave ourselves credit for. So you will often feel better about your life when you look at, oh, wow. I mean, one of my favorite things, and I have cried at this, Tony, which is a little embarrassing, is when my iPhone suddenly pushes all these memories at me, like on this day, on June 12th, and these following years, this happened. And you see these pictures and they're such amazing memories, but in the moment, we didn't fully appreciate them. So go back and appreciate your past.
I love that. I encourage people to reflect, quarterly on their accomplishments, their financial accomplishments. Yeah, there's going to be some bad things that happen, but usually there's a lot more positive that you've been able to accomplish. So I love that advice. So what is one habit that people can change when it comes to their money?
We're going to stick to a theme here. The bad habit is not making intentional decisions, not paying attention. Just going about our daily lives is the best we all feel we can do. It's tough to get through the day. I remember when I had my son, people said, if your baby is healthy and fed and did his stuff and goes to sleep on time and everyone's alive and healthy, you're good. You did your job. Well, no, you have to actually stop and carve out time to make these financial decisions, even if they're simply putting things in place like automatic savings, automatic investing. We don't have to have a lot of fancy decisions. You don't have to buy individual stocks, but you do have to put your money intentionally in the best place for you. I found out recently someone in my life has not been investing in the stock market their whole life. Personal decision. We're not going to judge, but the returns lost are significant, right? So it's really important to make sure that you are actually carving out time to make those decisions. And it's so hard. We all are just busy with day to day, but that's why I say pay bills on auto pay, but I still tell you to put them in your calendar and still look at the bills, because bills, there's a lot of, first of all, there's a lot of creep up in the fees. In many bills that we put on auto pay, they love for us to put on auto pay because then they add 20 cents here, $1 here. And suddenly that little cable bill that you had, or if you still have cable, whatever, let's say your cell phone bill is creeping up with different fees. And some fees you may not have any choice, but at least be aware. So
Yeah.
we're sticking to a theme here, Tony.
No,
At least
and
I'm
that's right. And
consistent.
yeah, and I encourage people, to track these things. Have a cash flow statement. It's essentially sort of like a budget, but you're tracking your income and expenses, and you can see if those things are moving. Because, like you said, bill creep is a real thing. And if you have cable, you can oftentimes call your cable company and just say, "Hey, my bill's too expensive," and lo and behold, they'll just give you a lower rate, to retain you as a customer. So some of these
That's
things
a
are
good tip
easy to do.
too. Always call and try to renegotiate your bills.
Definitely. And it works. So what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time knowing what you know now about money?
Ask for more. I don't think I've been great when I had corporate jobs. I wasn't great about getting raises. And sometimes that was unavoidable because I was in a job that was a union job. But I do think that we need to be better. And this is stereotypically to women more than men. But I don't think that I think that I advocate well for other people, but not always for myself. And that's a good reminder to all of us. Even when I do, I have clients at Financial Wellness Strategies. I'm sorry to say this, but I should be charging all of you more. I get so involved in the work that, sometimes you love your work, you would do it for free, but you can't. And it's important that everyone understand that you are valuable and you are worth, receiving the amount of compensation that is commensurate with your value. And I think that I have to remember that myself. So I need to remember to charge my clients appropriately. And I want to remind everyone that they do deserve to be paid and that you should be proactive about getting paid the right amount. It's hard though, when you have a book out and someone wants you to speak about your book, you want to do it. And they say they have no budget and you're like, oh, well, okay. But no, I mean, at a certain point, and you can do that a little bit when you're promoting the book because there's a reason for that. But we do have to advocate for ourselves. And I think there is, we talk so much about investing and the idea of passive income. But the truth is, for many people, especially in the younger years, our biggest asset is our ability to earn money. And we need to remember that. Yes, we want to sock away money. We absolutely should. Both things can be true. But our earning power is a tremendous asset. And we should never forget about that. And we must be self-advocates. I've never heard of somebody just getting a raise just because their bosses like them. Bosses are running a business and they have to keep their costs low, and they will pay you from a business perspective. They should pay you as little as they can to keep you there. They don't want you to leave, but they also want to retain as much capital as possible to run the business and to turn a profit. So there is that balance that has to be met.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And people who've watched and listened to the show for a while have heard us talk about the gender pay gap, and so especially this is an issue for women. So especially as a woman, I'd urge you to say, hey, you want to be paid the same as the male. You can't come out and say it exactly that way, but if you know your value,
maybe we should,
as you point out.
Yeah.
That's how I've said to solve the gender pay gap is for every boss out there, pay the women the same as the men in your organization. Pretty simple. Close the gender pay gap. But it's not, people aren't going to do that. Like you say, is you have to advocate for yourself. So you have to know your worth, find out what coworkers are making if you can, or research online for your job. And like you say, you have to do it. You're the only person who can do it for yourself. Your boss is going to come to you and say, hey, Bobbi, you want an extra 10% this year? Because who's going to say no to that?
Exactly. Right.
So that's awesome advice. So what is your number one tip on changing the way we think about money?
Have a conversation, which we've already talked about. The answers are not always linear, and it's important to consider different angles. And I love the idea of bringing other people into your conversation. We have tremendous resources we may not even fully recognize, especially if you have older friends or relatives that are more experienced, someone who has subject matter expertise. Have a conversation with them, get other opinions. We talk so candidly about so many things in our lives. Let's talk candidly about money. Find someone to have the conversation with. Reach out to me. I'll have a conversation with you. It's important not to just go it alone. Have a conversation.
That's awesome. So, the next question is about where can people learn more about you, your books, financial wellness strategies, and your awesome Substack?
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So my free Substack newsletter is at bobbirebell.substack.com. So that's BOBBIREBELL.substack.com. Free money tips. I would love to make it into a paid newsletter at some point, but I will always offer a free offering. And for now, it is absolutely free. And I would love to see people there. You can learn more about my company, Financial Wellness Strategies, at our website, which is financialwellnessstrategies.com. And when you go there, you will get a pop-up window and you can book a 15-minute conversation with me. We can just chat. If you just want to have a conversation with me, that's fine. If you're interested in learning more about financial wellness strategies, we can talk about that. And there's a lot of information about the company there. And of course, my books are available, I hope, everywhere books are sold, but certainly on that big behemoth Amazon. If you want to support small bookstores, though, if you tell them, they will order it. Same thing with the library. I'm a huge advocate for the library. If you tell the library that you would like my book, in many cases, they will order it for you. And that's a wonderful thing, because then when you're done with the book, you can return it to the library and somebody else can share it. So I love that. And connect with me on LinkedIn, just under Bobbi Rebell. I think I've got my married last name on there, which is Kaufman, or on Instagram, which I need to get better at doing. I haven't really done a lot of that recently, but it's Bobbi Rebell and the number 1. And fun fact, Tony, do you know why the number 1 is there? Because when it started, I lost my login and I still have never been able to get it back. They won't give it back to me. Isn't that crazy? I can't get it back. So it's Bobbi Rebell and the number 1.
That is
and there's a lot of imposters out there. So there's fake Instagram accounts. So please make sure that you are on the correct one. And if someone's trying to sell you crypto, it's not me. Just so you know, I never sell anything on my Instagram account. So don't buy anything from somebody claiming to be, I'm not joking about this part. No, there's fake accounts out there and I try to get them shut down, but they do pop up quite a bit because I'm in the media a lot and people do impersonate me. And that goes for anyone, especially a financial money expert that you see online. Please make sure it's the correct account, because if they are trying to sell you something, well, some do, some might be legit, but just make sure that you know what you're doing. Be careful with those, with your personal information.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, is people should seek out and make sure it is the person that they think they're following. And for everybody watching and listening, as always, there will be links to all the resources that Bobbi mentioned and social media profiles in the show notes, so you can make sure you follow those to make sure you get the correct account. But that's great advice, is to be careful from where you're getting the advice. So that's awesome. Bobbi, appreciate all your time and everything. And thanks again for joining us on the Get Ready Money podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like I learned so much from you, Tony.
Well, I learned a lot from you, and I hope our audience learned something as well. And as always, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of the Get Ready Money podcast. If you learned something today to change the way you think about money, please be sure to subscribe and tell a friend. Until next time, let's change the way we think about money.